ways of using technology in teaching, in learning, and lecturers were forced to learn how to read other signs besides simply body language on whether your students are understanding what you're saying or not. I recall during the lead up to the election last year, during the lockdown and afterwards, encountering a lot of postgraduate students in various parts of my constituency who had organized classes for a lot of the children in the communities because the schools had been shut down. Now, I mention this because when we're talking about the value of postgraduate students within the context of good education at a time like this, that ability to translate what you know by being able to teach somebody else is key. So as you spend time here, and as you are learning what it is that you're meant to teach, the method by which you can teach is important as well. Because I'm sure, as you all know, as you teach, you discover that people have different learning styles. And as a teacher or as a lecturer, your ability to recognize the styles that your students or your class have, and to be able to modify your teaching skills so that they all can benefit, or as much as possible, people don't fall on the wayside, makes you different from the next person. And so as you go through the school, take in as much as you possibly can. Do not narrow yourself down to what is only your field of expertise. The more you know, the better your ability to reach out of where you find yourself. Because as the pandemic has taught us, the more adaptable you are, the more agile you are, the greater your ability to survive and to thrive. And if this is anything to go by, it is something that should teach us that life is not black and white, and there is no manual that prepares us adequately, because things will come up, and our ability to adapt, to adjust to situations, that is all part of your education. The president has directed that all schools must go back. So we're all at full capacity and we're all back. But it does not change the fact that at some point, something else could come up. And we're not hoping for it to do so, but we must maximize the time that we have in learning, in teaching, in networking, in getting to know one another, so that whenever we find ourselves in a crisis situation, we're able to reach out to one another, not as strangers or just as mere colleagues, but as friends. If there's one thing that we learned about this period under the pandemic and under lockdown and various restrictions that were put in place, it was the importance of a society's ability to network. That friendship, that ability to help one another and reach out to one another became ever so important. And we must not lose that going forward. Regarding the pandemic, there are still questions regarding why we find so many asymptomatic cases in Ghana compared to other places. And that's something that our scientists need to take a little bit more interest in. But that also stems from our policies and our paradigm as a nation, and the value we put on research, the value we put on teaching. Postgraduate implies having completed some level of study already and coming to do some more. The objective of tertiary level education is to expand your horizons, to deepen your knowledge, to help you with your critical thinking, to be able to prepare you as you help mold our nation builders. And all of these are to get people to be people who will work in the public service, in the armed forces, not limited to, but including, whether it's an agric, but then of course the most noble of all, or one of the most, teaching. Perhaps teachers are not being good enough ambassadors of themselves, because no country can move forward without a sound education. If your citizens are not well educated, it's difficult to make them understand why certain policies are important. So your role as those who are imparting knowledge is so crucial. And your ability to teach those who you will be imparting knowledge to how to think critically how to be more patriotic is so key. Because one of the reasons why we find ourselves where we are today as a nation is because there's a gap between our socialization, what we had as our traditional rites of passage, and our education. So there's this gap which nobody is really taking up, because now the rites of passage that the young women and young men, when they reached puberty or the adolescent age, had to go through, where they would have to spend, the boys would spend time with the men, or the women with the young girls, and they would teach them certain skills in life, which would include how to groom themselves and their attitude towards their community and that sense of belonging. As we have progressed with education, we seem to have left a bit of that behind, but no nation can truly develop sustainably if it leaves behind its identity. And so you have a big task now, to take on board a little bit of that in terms of how we prepare our young people. And it's not only about the ability to read and write, but it's also about the holistic education, critical thinking, what it means to be a citizen, and what belonging to a community, belonging to a country means. If we're talking about education, under the 1992 Constitution, Article 25(1, tells us that all persons have the right to equal educational opportunities and facilities with a view of achieving the full realization of that right. What you're doing here is enshrined in this Constitution of ours. It's not political talk, it's not partisanship, and it's not propaganda. This is where the real work happens. But the value of what we offer then depends on how much we're willing to dedicate ourselves to taking on the knowledge, not only what's in our books, but beyond that, so that in any given circumstances, no matter which subject you're teaching, wherever you find yourself, you are a pillar of knowledge. You can be a guiding force for the younger people. If today we're looking at the youth as a threat to our national security, perhaps it's because our generation hasn't done enough to ensure that they are a force of building our nation. So we must do more. I don't believe that hope is lost. I think the fact that we're able to sit in this room today and have a conversation about quality of education tells us that we know we can do better. The fact that we have a campus of this caliber, where you have, I think, nationwide over 75,000 students, that says a lot. It means that the quality that University of Education Winneba is offering is of such a high caliber that people know that if you want that value, this is where you should be. So with all due respect, if you find yourself here, as much as it is a right, it is also a privilege. Please make the most of it. Because now, when you leave this institution, you carry with you the name. You must protect the name. You must ensure that in whatever you do, you put the best foot forward of this university, and that is in what you will be doing as you go forward. How you conduct yourself as a teacher. How you're able to impart your knowledge to your students and your pupils. All of these are so important. And as I look into this crowd, I know I'm not speaking to people who don't know what they're about. You're here because you know the value of this school, this university. You know what it presents. And so as you go out, be good ambassadors. Be good ambassadors for the teaching profession. It is noble. No nation can develop without very good education. No nation can develop without the teachers adequately preparing and molding its citizens and its leaders to be. I'm hoping that more and more the emphasis on the level of experience and expertise that we have for those who are teaching the younger ones at the kindergarten level should become a very, very serious priority, because that is the foundation. When the foundation is weak, everything else that's built on it is not as strong as it ought to be. The discussion on the remuneration of teachers is one that is constantly talked about, but perhaps we're not dealing with it well enough. Unfortunately, it becomes a partisan issue at some point. It becomes a political issue, which it is in many ways. But fundamentally, it is about ensuring that those who are building the foundations of our nation know that we value them as a nation, that the country actually values them. We would not be here if you didn't give us what we have. My foundation was because I had teachers. I did not wake up with the knowledge I have today. Whether it was through kindergarten or primary school, through JSS, SSS, or university. I was just speaking to Reverend Prof, and I was telling him that I went to medical school because he was saying how Winneba is full of students. You can't go 100 meters without meeting a student. And I was explaining to him that I went to Dublin for my medical school, and when you have a town or a city that has the influence that you have so many students, it changes everything about that place. It should have an impact. You have made Winneba a big deal. Not that it wasn't before, but you have really added value. And so when people hear Winneba, they think about education. And so it should be. And it should reflect in the community as well. I don't know if you have voluntary days where some of your staff go into the community. But if you don't have that as yet, I would highly recommend that. Because sometimes the volunteering is what helps young people see that there is something beautiful in teaching. And then they can have that first impression of meeting you outside of a school unit specifically, but understanding that there is this amazing profession, which is what you do. Your ability to be agile as teachers, your ability to collaborate given the few resources you have, understanding what your vision is so crucial. Creativity is important. There are times when what you need is not there, but your ability to be creative is what will help you to capture the imagination of your students and your pupils. Make use of all your faculties. That is what makes you a beautiful teacher. That is what makes you amazing. I remember when I was in JSS, we had a teacher called Mrs. Amatiama. And by the time she was done with us, I think we all knew the student's companion in first aid in English because she had this way of doing this. She used to call, I can't remember what she called it, but she would go around the class and it was like a speed thing and we'll go around and she'd tell you which page she was going to tackle the following week, and we all had to do it because you didn't know whether you'd be rearranged in the class to learn what it is that you had to do and recite it. So just to make sure you didn't embarrass yourself, you made an effort. Let's help our young people understand that education is not just about the certificate. It's beyond that. The quality of what you're studying is important. And so as you go about what you do here, your role, you can only impart what you have. Let's make the most of the facilities you have. You have your libraries, you have access to the online facilities. Make the most of that while you can. This is the best opportunity for you. Right now, it's all about how to be creative and innovative and make sure that you're co-creating with your students, because sometimes we learn from those that we teach, and it's an ongoing activity. Let us allow the young ones who we're teaching to thrive. Let them ask their questions. No question is a foolish question. Give them that opportunity to build their confidence and their self-esteem. Sometimes the only educated person a child will meet in their life is their teacher. And if you can give them that self-esteem, that confidence, and the value system, the principles that they will need, so that when they become leaders in society, the money that is meant for your remuneration, the money that is meant for your education is channeled to you and not into their pockets. All of these are important because of the values that we teach them. So, Nananom, as you have your role traditionally, let us see how the things that our young ones can't learn from you nowadays, the teachers can take that up as well, so that we close this gap between our culture and our education. and stop thinking that becoming educated means leaving all our culture and traditions behind. There are very good things in our traditions, there are good things in our culture that we must hold on to and inculcate into our education. That is what makes us unique. That is why we can look at China and say China has achieved this, or India has achieved that, or Singapore has achieved this or that. The reason is they understand the value of a hybrid system between what they have as their cultural beliefs, as their tradition, and the education that is modern. And being able to blend that towards the vision of what you want your nation to be is where we want Ghana to be as well. Let's remember who we are as Ghanaians. Let's bring the best of our various cultures together. Incorporate that with the education. And as we move forward, let's make the best of what we have to ensure that whether there's a pandemic or not, be it COVID or any other, we can still impart the best of the knowledge that we have towards the younger ones in our society. Thank you so very much.